We are here to announce the indictment of Alexander Cote and Al-Shafi al-Sheikh. Cote and al-Sheikh were members of the notoriously brutal ISIS hostage-taking cell that became known as the Beatles, a name their captives gave to them because of their British accents. The defendants are charged with terrorism offenses related to hostage-taking and killing of 4 Americans, as well as citizens of Great Britain and Japan. For over a year, Cote and al-Sheikh were held in Iraq by the U.S. military under the law of armed conflict. I'm pleased to confirm that they are now in FBI custody and will soon appear in federal court in the Eastern District of Virginia. Today is a good day, but it is also a solemn one. Today, we remember the 4 innocent Americans whose lives were taken by ISIS. James Wright Foley, Stephen Joel Sutloff, Peter Edward Kasich, and Kayla Jean Mueller. Many around the world are familiar with the barbaric circumstances of their deaths. But we will not remember these Americans for the way they died. We will remember them for the way they lived their good and decent lives. James Foley was a print and video journalist who was covering the civil war in Syria. He had previously served as a conflict zone correspondent in Iraq and then in Libya. James was a former elementary school teacher. Stephen Sotloff was a journalist who covered the Middle East and was in Syria reporting on the refugee crisis. According to a longtime friend, he was drawn to the region to, quote, give a voice to the people who didn't have one, close quote. Stephen was the grandson of Holocaust survivors who inspired him to be that voice. Peter Kasich was in Syria working for a humanitarian organization that he founded to deliver food and medical aid to the refugees. He had previously served as an elite airborne ranger in the U.S. Army, which included service in Iraq. Kayla Mueller was a humanitarian aid worker and human rights activist who, inspired by her faith, devoted much of her young life to serving those in need both at home and abroad. As President Trump shared during his 2020 State of the Union address, the American warriors who conducted the military operation that resulted in the death of ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi were so inspired by Kayla that they named the mission Task Force 814, a reference to August 14th, Kayla's birthday. Today's announcement is the result of many years of hard work in the pursuit of justice for these Americans. We have been inspired by their memories and moved by the determination and grit of their families. Families which will never rest until justice is done. To them, I say this, neither will we.
Today's announcement makes clear once again that combating terrorism remains the FBI's top priority, and that the entire United States government remains committed to bringing to justice anyone who harms our citizens. We showed that resolve to the world last week by repatriating Americans who had traveled to Syria to support ISIS so that they will face charges here. And today we're demonstrating that resolve by bringing to our shores 2 men who left Britain to become ISIS terrorists. Now they're going to face justice in an American court of law for crimes against American citizens. Not long after these terrorists were captured in 2018, the parents of their American victims wrote the following about their loved ones, and I quote, "One by one, our children were taken from us by the hateful criminals of the Islamic State. Jim, Stephen, Peter, and Kayla were like so many of your own sons and daughters. They were 4 unique, passionate young Americans, and all risked their lives pursuing a greater good. The families of those victims have suffered the painful loss of their loved ones at the hands of brutal killers. And while their pain may never fully subside, today, with the announcement of this indictment, we're beginning to bring them the justice they deserve. But we owe these families more than justice. We owe them our gratitude. And I say that because their advocacy for their loved ones has led to positive changes in how our government supports and partners with victims' families. One of those changes was the creation a few years ago of the Hostage Recovery Fusion Cell. This multi-agency team, based at FBI headquarters, represents our government's unified approach to recovering American hostages abroad. Its single focus is to bring these hostages home safely and partner with their families in the recovery effort. A key part of that fusion cell is the family engagement team. That team not only coordinates support to family members of hostages during times of agony and uncertainty, it also supports hostages and families once the crisis is over. The FBI and our partners are working tirelessly every day to recover all U.S. hostages held abroad, and we won't rest until we see a similar resolution for justice against all those responsible for holding Americans captive, especially when those captives' lives are taken. Today, I want to also thank the men and women of the FBI and our domestic and international partners for their unflagging efforts to investigate, charge, and ultimately hold these two men responsible for their crimes.